Hey there, and welcome to the Fedora Podcast. This is episode number 30. We're going to be talking about Fedora Silverblue and immutable desktops and why our guests are currently upset at me for saying it's an immutable desktop. Hi there, I'm Eric, the IT guy Hendricks. I'm really excited to be with you. It's another Tuesday afternoon, and it is like 20 degrees cooler here than it has been. So I'm really excited about today's episode. And joining me is one of my favorite co-hosts, Mr. Joseph. Welcome to the Fedora Podcast.
Thanks so much, Eric. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, this will be great. And I'm happy to say that we are one minor tweak away from having the beautiful animation to kick off the show. So we've got some music with it. We've got an animation. There's just one more tweak we're waiting on. So I'm really, really looking forward to that. Now, I'm all about not talking meta about the podcast on the podcast. So why don't we dive into our topic today? Joseph, you want to tell us what we're going to discuss? And then we'll bring in our guests.
So we can't talk about it without ruffling a few feathers, but this is a very exciting episode because it's all about immutable distros, immutable distributions. Now, that's something that's been getting talked about a lot, not just because of there being a few distros out there, but because there are a lot of different approaches to immutability. There is a debate going on what does immutability mean? Is that the best term? And really, there's a lot of depth to this topic, almost on a distro by distro level. So part of today is going to talk about not just immutability at a high level, but try to tackle some misconceptions and see if we can change the language a little bit. So I'll let our guests chime in with how we should be pivoting going forward and try to clear things up.
There's already a flame war going on in the chat. So why don't we bring in our guests and we'll get this episode kicked off. So we've got not one, but two guests today. So I'd like to introduce George and Timothy. George, why don't you go first and introduce yourself? Tell us what you do for a living, if you'd like. What do you do for Fedora, and what do you do for fun?
Yeah, so I'm George Castro. I started this project when I was actually on sabbatical. I currently work for the Cloud Native Computing Foundation, the CNCF.io, and I don't do anything from Fedora other than consume it and try to, get some of the feedback back in Fedora. I've been using Fedora full time for maybe 4 years now, and it was kind of time for me to start playing. And what I do for fun currently right now, working on Universal Blue and getting ready for KubeCon. So raising the kiddo upstairs and doing the best, trying to be the best person I can be, I guess.
Awesome. As a fellow tech dad, really excited. Hopefully it won't be too long before they're on the show with you.
Yeah, he's going to be the maintainer. That way I could just retire.
Perfect. There you go.
That's one way to recruit, to get contributors. You raise them young and they contribute for a long time. Lots of stability there, I think.
Love it. Love it. Timothy, welcome to the Fedora Podcast. Same questions. What do you do for a living? What do you do for Fedora? And what do you do for fun?
Hey, thanks for having me. Currently I'm a chorus engineer at Red Hat, working on Red Hat Chorus as part of OpenShift. And in Fedora, I work on a lot of different things, mainly on Fedora Chorus, and also I'm maintaining Fedora Silverblue and Fedora Kinoite as part of the KDE SIG.
Awesome.
And for fun, I dance Lindy Hop, which is a swing dance from the 20s from the US, a very old dance, but which is back in popularity right now.
You know, I've hosted a lot of podcasts on a lot of different networks, and that is probably a first. Do I dare challenge you to, after the show, dance for us on live stream?
I may try. I'm not sure how much it's going to work with the camera out here, but yeah. Let me see my dance moves.
All right, so I wanted to start out this episode zoomed way out. So before we adjust all of our terminology, why don't we start with a very basic question of what is the goal of an immutable desktop, and then we'll kind of talk about why that's fallen into disrepute, maybe. So what's the goal? Why would I want an immutable desktop?
Okay,
mine is going to be the most controversial, so all of you have to go first.
Oh, all right.
All right, Timothy. He threw the gauntlet back to you. So why don't you?
All right.
What's the goal of an immutable desktop? Why would we want one?
So I think for me, the main thing is that it makes it really hard to break my system. Like it makes it super reliable. Which is why I completely fell into this. I'm gonna be like diving a little bit of history. Like I came from Arch Linux. I was a huge Arch Linux fan. I was tweaking everything to my liking. I was building my custom packages. Everything was fully custom. But every time I had to change things, etc., I had to plan ahead to take time, because if I made a mistake during upgrades, and I had to make sure I got time to fix things, etc. With OpenMS3, with Immutable distribution, with Silverblue, with Kinoite, I just don't have that fear anymore. If whatever happens in the next update there's a bug, there's a problem, etc., I just roll back to the previous version and I keep on with my life until I have time to actually look at the issue. Even for me, a developer, like sometimes it's not the right time, and I just want to go back and live my life.
I can give my perspective as more of an end user, where my first exposure to the term immutable actually comes from Chrome OS, where I was a big fan. I was an early adopter. For those who know, I got the Samsung Series 5 Chromebook, which is like literally one of the two first Chromebooks you could buy. And at the time, I was attracted to just the whole living in the browser piece. But as I learned more about what immutable meant, I was attracted to not just the stability, but the security aspect as well. So just knowing that things are very locked down, and that it's a lot of the important system components, they're read-only. So even if I wanted to mess something up, I'd really have to know what I was doing before I could mess something up. And especially once I transitioned into using Linux, it makes it even harder, right? Where obviously I try to set on the terminal, so I think it's very unlikely I'll mess something up. But if I knew a little more, I could do more damage than I wanted. And so the benefit of immutability to me is knowing that from a security standpoint, things should be very stable. It should just be harder. It should be harder for anyone to get into my system. Now, to what degree that's a misconception, depending on what I'm using, I hope to learn a little bit. I think I'm on the right track with Kinoite, but that's my take.
So my first experience with Silverblue was very negative, and not because of anything wrong with the project or with the spin. It was my expectations were not where they needed to be. So I went in and I installed it. It's like, okay, this is supposed to make upgrades. It's supposed to make my life easier. And so I went to go and start installing packages. And it's just like, this doesn't work. Oh, wait, no, maybe it's me. But when I think about this whole immutability topic, the thing that comes to mind is what we've carried around in our pockets for years, is the ability to do upgrades in place, for the operating system to be encapsulated away from all the apps. So you have the apps that download on their own, they update in place. It's easy to fall back to an older version, maybe not on a cell phone, but when we get to, say, desktop scale, or in my line of work, we talk a lot about the edge of your IT network. So we talk about systems that may not get a stable internet connection. So when they have that ability to connect to the internet, they download slowly the updated code, and until that code has been completely downloaded and validated, it stays on a running known good condition. So when I think about this whole topic, that's where my brain goes. Now, George, I had to cut you short in the pre-show because we were talking about this before we went live. So I really, really want to know, what are your thoughts on this topic? Not the technology specifically, but what is the goal in this space?
I'll tell you exactly why I started this. I was growing frustrated with the lack of the Linux desktop to keep up with literally everything else, right? Like that YouTuber broke his desktop, that famous guy, 2 years ago? And the major distros have really done nothing about it other than pretend that the Linux desktop is reliable, right? And instead people flame the operator for making a mistake. And I think it's absurd that I can spend $5,000 on a Thelio and it's not as reliable as a $200 Chromebook. So I wanted to really fix this problem. It was It doesn't make sense to me. Like, just doesn't compute. And Fedora was the furthest along. But I did run into the same issues that you were having with Silverblue, and I had to wait until the OCI pattern was made available so I can bring the known good cloud patterns that we know do work in scalability and usability and all that kind of stuff. So for me, this is more about, we know we have a thing that can get us there, right? And it's more about getting good base images and teaching people that this is the way forward and the way to go. And like I said, this is going to be controversial. There are a lot of parts of the traditional desktop Linux model that are really unsustainable, and they're just not going to work. But a lot of people don't want to hear that. So here I am.
I get where you're coming from, and that's definitely a complaint that I've heard as well from like some security-minded spaces where you hear Linux compared to Chrome OS or even Mac OS, and immutability is one of those things. So I'm here for it. I'll be in your corner. I'm down. I'm picking up what you're putting down.
No, that's really great. I love that perspective, and I love your passion to fix this issue, because when people ask, a lot of times I tell them that my primary operating system is iPad OS, because no matter where I'm at, I can pull out my iPad, I can pull out my keyboard, and I know it's going to work. I don't have to worry about, did I download the latest packages? And this is coming from a recovering Arch user. So, I mean, I feel that pain. I know what that looks like. So let's dive into it. I think we strung the audience along. So what is the issue around immutability? There's talk of like atomic in the chat and that kind of thing. So what are the terms at play here, and what are the differences, and why is immutable not really what we're striving for?
I can start. I think the main thing is that as much as we would like it to be immutable, it's not. Like, you can still modify a lot of things on the system. The only thing that is read-only is the actual system files, the files from that's usually the application, the binaries, the icons, etc. But everything else is immutable, like on a regular system. So when we call the entire system immutable, we make it sound like you can't do anything with it, where essentially the whole point of what we're doing is to enable you to control how it is changed, how it evolves, how it is updated, like, and do it on your own pace, instead of being driven away, like being overwhelmed by it. Like you're in control of your operating system. And so the immutable term, in a sense, it feels backward for us at this point.
George, you got more to add there?
Yeah, and I feel it like takes away from the actual features of the operating system, because everyone is kind of obsessed around the immutability, and that's just really stamping out a final image at the end. And they forget the composability part, which is the important thing that we do, which is declaring what you want the system to look like, and then having a thing that builds it for you. And then when you make changes, it like generates a new image. So every day you're getting like a fresh, built from scratch OS. It's not like people conflate it with file system snapshot sometimes, which we should probably talk about. But the entire point is that composability, because that gives us the ability to share using the same common patterns with like GitOps. Ublue is just GitOps, for your operating system. And by just reusing those patterns, it gives us that stuff. It's like you get a new supercar and you want to talk about the engine and the performance, and everyone's like, but the seatbelts are uncomfortable. And you're just like, what? Why are we talking about the seatbelts? So, just the fact that you can layer things now, and you can get that customization. But if you share a config with someone that solves a problem that you have, you can integrate that into your system, and then kind of stamp out a final image. Instead of the old days, you would just copy and paste a script from a forum, right? You would say, Ublue is basically one of those operating system fixer scripts, right? Remember, these used to come out and it would be like, fix your OS, right? Adds the codecs and all that stuff that you want. And then people run it, and then sometimes it runs all the way, or sometimes the package needs to get updated. There's always something, right? And you can't guarantee that anyone can run that script and get the same result, right? And these kind of systems kind of remove that problem entirely, because the image either finishes and builds correctly, or it errors out, and then the bad image never gets to the device, which is so awesome. Because you can actually save yourself from a lot of bugs. There's been issues in Fedora where we've been able to hold the package back, with that RPM OS tree override command. And, our images were able to save regressions from the Flatpak regression. There was a recent regression in Podman that we were able to mitigate by just holding back the version, because our community was able to kind of work on the composability part and get that to what the community wanted it to be. And then it gets stamped out at the end. And I think a lot of people, they get bent around the axle about being able to modify the final product, right? It's like when your relatives ask you to modify a PDF and you tell them you don't modify PDFs, you modify the form and then you print out a new PDF so that you don't have to deal with editing PDFs, because that's awful, right? But people do it. So that's kind of where I'm coming from, I think. I hope that answers that question.
I think so. If I'm understanding correctly, you're telling me I don't have to go out and write a pile of Ansible playbooks to manage my RPM-based desktop?
It's even better. Other than there's some limitations there, you could take those existing Ansible playbooks, and we need to enforce this pattern more. So far, I think Jim Campbell's the only one really that was actively doing research in the area, is you can use your Ansible playbooks inside the container file and ideally stamp out an image. However, there's limitations, Timothy. I don't know if you know.
This is
some modules that don't work.
This is definitely we're part of work in progress where there's, to give it a little bit more context, there's a shift right now. All of the distribution we're speaking about here, Silverblue, Kinoite, and the family, Chorus, and friends, they are based on RPM-3 and OS3 right now. And we're progressively shifting to container images, so the OCI standard format. And so it's still an in-progress transition, but the main idea is that you would be able, using this format, to essentially take out the base image, the image that we produce as Fedora, the base desktop, and then you would have your own custom changes, which is what Universal Blue is doing right now. They take our images and they tweak things, they install packages, they remove ones. They had proprietary drivers, for example, that we cannot ship for legal reasons in Fedora, etc., and all those things. And so this here, you could do the same thing with an Ansible playbook, for example. You could run your Ansible playbook to tweak your customization, your system, set up your settings, and you get then a new container image that you would deploy on your systems.
So there was an article that I read, I think last week, that the Evil Skeleton put out called Misconceptions about Immutable Distributions. And it sounds very similar to what, George, what you're getting at, where a lot of the benefit of supposed immutability, as we're saying, is actually from the maintainer and development side, where there's efficiencies going on there in those processes, helping things be more consistent, more stable. So now I understand your analogy of like fixating on seatbelts. It's like, it's almost like folks who are on the end user side, we're consuming immutable distros. We're trying to get almost like the bang for the buck of immutability. Like, I got to do something with this immutability aspect. And it's like, no, that's not for you necessarily to worry about so much. That's just so that we can deliver a better distro to you. So the benefit is indirect, which I think Evil Skeleton also mentions. Does that kind of sum up a lot of your feeling, where it's primarily a benefit to developers that then you feel as an end user because the distro comes up more stable or more consistent?
Yeah, because you could do what you want, right? If it's a container file, and we talked about Ansible, but anything you can put in a container file / Docker file, we use those terms interchangeably. Bash, Python, doesn't matter as long as the build finishes at the end. You drag entire files. Obviously, you can drag entire file systems in there because that's what we're booting. But you can basically figure out how to build it, and as long as it gets on the image, and that kind of allows. One of the things I think is interesting is that GitOps aspect is it lets people like me who are kind of SRE, like ops background, and then you have your distribution work, right? It's like this new layer that's on top that allows us to, we make new desktops all the time. Sometimes people want to try a new version GNOME with different, default options. So we work with Cassidy James Blade to make a separate GNOME image that was like his little vision or whatever. And Bazite is just Kinoite with a bunch of gaming stuff added, right? So you're kind of constantly building on previous blocks of the thing that came before you, but you can like choose what you want and what you don't want, which is really nice because that's the pattern. That's the pattern that we got from cloud, right? Like when you're building your app containers and stuff like that, you start from CentOS 5 or whatever. What's the latest version? 6. Sorry. And then you say, okay, now copy my Node app into the container, and then you do that thing. It's that pattern. Linux went through this 10 years ago. It's just the desktop is going through now. I think that is something maybe we should, I'm definitely being louder about it. It's the pattern has kind of proven itself, I feel, because a lot of people that are contributing to Universal Blue have an ops background and they don't have a distro background. So it's like, oh, this is neat. This is how I manage my clusters at work. And it is like,
so I think that could be a good opportunity to transition into. Yeah, I think that could be a good opportunity to transition into. So what are the preferred terms that we have? And George, maybe you can start with that since you've already mentioned cloud and operations. Go for it.
Fedora invented it. So I say you name it, call it atomic, but have it cover a bunch of things that are major transitions, because you kind of have to format your machine to do this, right? So like the user has to make I am transitioning from one thing to the other. So I say anything that you feel needs to be in a transition, put it under the atomic brand, because there's that UKI kernel thing is coming. ComposeFS, like I don't know how any of that fits, right? And then you could set like X sessions are going away as soon as possible in the atomic brands. Like basically acknowledge that it's a different set of criteria than what Fedora Workstation is. And then you just future align to everything, because you're going to get people that want to opt in. Like, I don't want to argue about X sessions. I want to get rid of that thing as soon as possible and get my software fixed. That's what I want to do. And I feel like Fedora has this opportunity because it is very unique in that composability.
One of the areas I could see really working this in is I'm trying to build out a home lab, because I also work for Red Hat, and I work as a Red Hat Enterprise Linux technical marketer. So I spend a lot of time talking to sysadmins, showing off new features. So being able to spin something up quickly to give a presentation and tear it back down is really important. And so one of the things that I could see this working out is I usually have a Bastion host, something that only has like a single port open to the internet and only from certain IP addresses, so that I can get back into my network no matter where I'm at. And right now that's just a Fedora workstation that very closely mirrors the tower I have over here off camera. And my thought is I need to replace that as quickly as possible with, say, Silverblue. That way I can define what that thing looks like, because my hope is at some point, if my home network goes down, if the house loses power, I want certain systems to spin up somewhere else like DigitalOcean. And having that identical system, because it uses the exact same file, that way I can get in, I'll have all my tools, I'll have my SSH keys, all those things are ready, no matter whether it's in my home lab or spun up somewhere else. And I really think this is the way to go, especially when you think about it scale. If I were maintaining a lab or a classroom, this is the way to do it. Not going in and managing 20 low-end systems all by hand. No, one image, set it on a server somewhere, deploy it every day, and you've got a clean, ready-to-go system wherever you're at. I mean, I was already sold on the idea, but this conversation really has me wanting to jump into the terminal and start building this. I really underestimated Silverblue a few years ago, and it's one of those things I've never gotten back to. But this conversation is really driving this need to, I think, so little about upgrades on my devices, on my mobile devices. Why not my desktop? Why am I still in a place where I have to babysit my desktop? My servers are managed by Ansible. My mobile devices are managed by automatic updates overnight. Why do I still babysit a desktop? I don't need to. I have other things to do.
Can you believe this is controversial? I still don't understand.
Like,
I
well, I
don't
guess if you
understand
want
why
to
this is
babysit the
controversial. I mean, I
desktop
just
as a
want to work a
hobby,
computer. I got the new framework, not the new framework. I got the framework 13, the Intel one, because I was starting a new job. I put my image on. I was done in 3 minutes, like as fast as it could basically DD the disk. That was it. All my machines run off the same image, so you're always on the right stuff. It's fantastic. And then this is something that should be in the atomic definition. It includes a container runtime. And I think we're not being explicit enough to saying that the Linux desktop, a container runtime is now a critical component of the Linux desktop. I know people will think that's controversial, but it does allow you to run anything from everywhere. So any distro, any package, like I could kind of, like there is no, I'm kind of in this post distro thing where like I let Fedora handle my host. And if I feel like having a Fedora user space that day, I have one. And if not, I use Ubuntu. If not, I use Homebrew. Whatever the default Fedora one will be, like Toolbox and Fedora, right? A Fedora container. I'm not, like, no surprises there, right? But like, because everything is built around OCI, you could just swap that out. If you like Alpine, use Alpine. It kind of gives people a lot of that flexibility, I think. Especially if they have an older package that doesn't come in a flat pack, or or it might be troublesome, or it's an older package that's discontinued and you need a feature. Just toss it in an older container and then go to town. At least it's isolated a little bit.
So I did have a question because we mentioned atomic a few times here. So I don't want to go over, and I think you guys, I think everyone on here can correct me where I'm wrong regarding the history of the term. But as I understand it, a lot of the rise of what is now Silverblue and similar variants started off as Project Atomic. So Silverblue was originally Project Atomic. That went through a rebranding that landed on Silverblue. Then the other Fedora spins that we have, they thought we would like to have an immutable variant, or an atomic variant, we should start saying. And so they got their own branch, and now, which is what, Timothy, where I'd like you to share, why is it that we're interested in coming back to the atomic, not only as a term to describe the technical aspect, but also as a brand for these distros that have RPM Fusion, RPM OS tree in common.
Yeah, definitely. The Atomic brand, the Project Atomic, has been there for a while, and it's been shut down. And we're not kind of trying to revive it, at least revive the brand. The idea is that, like, we know that at the beginning I also was on full-on immutable, but now we know that it's not a right word to use to describe those projects, and it's confusing to a lot of people. So we want to use something else, and thus we're trying to revive the Atomic brand and refocus regroup all of those projects, all of those desktop variants in Fedora that are using RPM-3 as a base technology to be regrouped under the Atomic umbrella. So this is a change in progress. It's going to be submitted to the Fedora console for approval, but hopefully soon we'll be saying Fedora Atomic desktops instead of saying immutable variants, and we would be regrouping all of those. So right now we have Fedora Silverblue, Fedora Kinoite. So Silverblue is the GNOME desktop, Fedora Kinoite with the Kili desktop. We have Sericera with the Sway environment. And with Fedora 39, there will be Fedora Onyx with the Budgie desktop. And so some of those are already planning to rename themselves to be more explicit. So be like Fedora Budgie Atomic or Fedora Sway Atomic instead of keeping their own names. And so this is a change in progress to move away from this immutable term that nobody really likes anymore, essentially, and to something that we can both embrace and use as a regrouping mechanisms. And secret projects, of course, is to make this the default in Fedora, so that we drop the atomic term at some
Yeah,
point.
we just call it Fedora. Yeah.
Yeah, and just call it Fedora.
Fedora.
Yes.
So we've got Fedora Silverblue, which is this atomic approach to desktops with the GNOME desktop at its core. We've got Kinoite, which is KDE, same atomic build, but it's KDE under the at the core. And then Ceresia, I've probably just butchered that. That's one of the tiling desktop managers, if I remember
Sway.
correctly. Sway. Thank you. And then
Yes.
Onyx, we just mentioned, is coming just a few weeks from date of recording. Few may be a little short-sighted, but soon we'll have Budgie. In fact, we talked about Fedora Budgie about a month ago on this show. So if you missed it, go check that episode. But the other thing we've talked about a little bit is this universal blue. This term has come up a few times. So for wow, I speak for a living. So universal blue. Why don't you explain to us what that is and what some of the project goals are for universal blue, or uBlue as it's been called a few times?
Yeah, so I was using Fedora for a long time. Actually, Josh Burkus reminded me about the project, and I ran into Colin Walters at a KubeCon. There's this whole Kubernetes story here in the background, but you don't have to deal with that right now. And as I started to dog food it, I found the pain points of things that were annoying to me and things like that. And once I realized how the OCI container thing was going, someone, not me, on the Fedora discussion forums posted, hey, I'm having a problem getting the automatic the OCI thing working. And I didn't know that it was live and landed in the distro. So I went that weekend with some friends and we kind of hacked something together. And then we looked up all the videos on YouTube, things everyone hates about Silverblue or whatever. And then we fixed the top 5 things. Their codecs didn't work because if you add RPM Fusion, if you don't do Timothy's extra step to unversion them, like you tell people, hey, it's more reliable. They add RPM Fusion, and it's like the same error they get in normal Fedora. So I wanted to fix that, and I knew Fedora couldn't fix that. So we kind of find our place there. And then we fixed that. We added DistroBox because everybody just kept wanting DistroBox. In the default images, we keep the Fedora Flatpaks. We don't try to do editorialized decisions. We do try to add hardware enablement in our main images. And then we have 2 images, Bazzite and Bluefin, which are kind of more opinionated. They're like George's vision of the desktop or whatever. And in there, I use like the Flathead Flatpaks instead. I ship Docker alongside Podman. I make a lot more editorial decisions around that based on the things that I feel. Well, it started off with me, and then a bunch of us, got together, and it's like, all right, what are the top 10 things we can fix in Fedora that we can actually just like you would write a script for? So codecs, finding the thumbnailer programs for each desktop is hard. There isn't one binary, so some of them use a different one. So we had to figure that out. And then the big one was NVIDIA drivers. Because we build that in CI, and the user's computer never has to build the NVIDIA driver. And despite some of the issues that we do have with it, sometimes I still think it's one of the most reliable. I mean, you don't have to build the kernel module at all. It just comes on the image, which is my question for Timothy. Can we make it so we can get kargs in the container file working so we don't have to do that as an extra step? I brought this laundry list of stuff for you to do if you want to.
I was wondering if there.
Yeah, because ideally what you want to do is be able to like
work up.
Deny list, Novo, and all that kind of stuff. Right now, the user has to do that extra step after they boot. So, that's all the images do. They're productized Silverblue and Kinoite.
Let me get my notebook so that I can write the facial list to that to the container stuff. I just wanted to say, like, I really love the Universal Blue project because it's fixing essentially the stuff that we cannot fix. Like, we have legal constraints in Fedora. They are what they are. We have to live with them, and that's what it is. At the same time, we're also trying to be upstream first, full open source and all of those, and so sometimes this clashes with the fact that you have an NVIDIA card in your machine, and so that's life. But so we stick by our principles, and at the same time, the Universal Blue projects, it just let us fix all of the stuff that we cannot fix in Fedora. So I really like this work here. It's awesome. For the cogs, I don't know. I would have to look it up and see if that's possible. It's likely that it's doable. It just needs to be plugged in into the code.
Yeah, and I want to point out that we wouldn't exist without your CI test repo, because Fedora itself does not publish OCI images of all those desktops. You were doing it. Do you want to tell that quick little story? Because it's pretty cool.
Yeah, we started. So right now we're still in Fedora building only the OS3 ones, and so the classic OS3 ones. That's what you use if you install Silverblue Kinoite by default. If you go to Universal Blue, you're switching to the container native ones, so to the OCI ones. Right now in Fedora, we don't build the OCI ones, but it's coming. We're working on it for Fedora 40, so hopefully we'll get there, and so it will be fully built by Fedora. So in the meantime, because we kind of need to get things started, I made a project on GitLab, GitLab CI, to get those images started, and this is what most of Blue uses to get the images. It's still Fedora. It's still 99% Fedora. It's just built somewhere else.
Nice. I love to see it from like a higher level standpoint. The fact that it seems, well, correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of the work that's happening with the atomic spin specifically is enabling a project like Blue. It just gets me excited to think that Fedora can be more of a platform, because there are a few other Fedora-based distros out there. And of course, look, I'm the Fedora marketing guy. I'm always going to say, maybe try Fedora first. I'll say that, but to see that other projects are considering, they have a niche that they're wanting to fulfill, and Fedora is the base that they want to use for whatever they want to do. We see that with Ubuntu, where sometimes the change that they're going to make to Ubuntu, sometimes it's a little more under the hood, but sometimes it's more related to the desktop environment or adding something else for what have you. There we go. It's just a slight difference that is not necessarily a neg on Ubuntu and what it is originally, but just, hey, we like using it, we want to do something else. And heck, if customization isn't at the heart of Linux, I don't know what is. So it's cool and exciting to see it develop. And it's not just, even though we do have a lot of spins, it's not just Fedora and our spins, but now people are taking extra steps and going in different directions. When we can, it is nice to see things fall under the Fedora project umbrella. And we do want to like enable and support that type of thing. But the power of the open source community and the desires and interests can easily go way outside that. So I'm excited, and I also think it's really cool. Just all the stuff that's happening on top of Fedora. It's great.
Yeah, exactly. Like the cool thing with Universal Blue is like it's really Fedora inside of it. It's not like you're making a new distribution based on another one. No, it's like you're using Fedora. Then you're adding tweaks on top, etc. But it's Fedora inside of it, and so you're not maintaining an entire new distribution, rebuilding all the packages. No, you don't do that. You use Fedora as the core, and then you had just like your tiny custom layer of changes on top of it. And it's just much more maintainable. And so you can do all sorts of variants that you like. A lot of people come to us in Fedora Land and say, hey, I want to make this special use case variant for special lab, something, etc. That's great. But like Fedora itself, we're only so many people. We cannot just do all specific variants for everybody. And this here, it enables us to make like the cool thing, and then you go out and you build your own special variants on your own. You don't need to ask us anything, and at the same time, it's manageable. It's sustainable instead of being a completely new distribution that's just not sustainable.
That's a good clarification. Thanks.
I want to add to that, because people say it's not a distro, but they think it's like marketing. It totally is marketing, But also, the important thing to remember is, man, I've been around the block, is you can throw away the UBlue customization and rebase back to a stock Fedora image. Like you can't, that's not a distro, that's something else. And you could do it atomically. Now we're starting to find out that there's stuff in dot files that programs are conflicting over, which those issues should be fixed anyway, regardless of whether you're swapping out the system image or not. But I also think it offers Fedora a new opportunity. And I brought numbers for you. We have over 2 million image pulls. That's not a indication of users, but we know that there's been at least 2 million successful upgrades. That's pretty cool. Over 50% of our images are KDE/Kinoite, right? Like, and they've always dominated, which is very interesting to me because it is, we don't really say there's a default. It's like a grid and we just like list them out, right? So people
I feel Neil's going to be happy in the chat.
Kinoite.
Yeah, I'm just waiting for it.
Yeah, I know that there's
There
people
it is.
who use KDE who love Kinoite. We know that the Steam Deck device is basically, you know, a KDE thing. So I think there's a different opportunity here when you look at what's a distro and what isn't a distro. Fedora has this unique position where you have something like Kinoite and you have a upstream, right? And then there's not this, the lines are kind of blurred, right? You can kind of, I would love to see KDE and Fedora kind of figure out this, because before there was like distro work and then there's like user work. Now we're entirely that kind of uncharted territory. And I think a distribution has to be the one to do that. Like KDE and Fedora can make Kinoite and things around Kinoite, including Bazite, to be a new, it's a new kind of adaptation of the distro model. And I think that's what I really want to be talking about, I think, with Fedora, because Bazite, we have it working on the Steam Deck, right? And that's because of the help of these patches that we get from Nobara. And then there's Chimera OS. There's a whole another adjacent gamer community that are enabling us to get, and all these packages and stuff, all the coppers, they're all available for all Fedora users. You can slap together your own thing. And I just think it's very cool that we can get the model allows us to have a device where Valve paid Red Hat to work on kernel stuff. They do it properly, so it goes upstream. And then your community distro, Fedora, and then a bunch of nerds like us put it together and can get a newer version of the kernel to the hardware device faster than Valve can. That's kind of cool. You know, and it feels like, and the ROG Ally, these new devices are coming out, and Fedora, like, we can now, this model allows us to slurp in all that stuff, but we still need the distributions to gather all the patches. Those need to be upstream. We automate coppers so much that it's kind of becoming a bad habit that we have all these coppers, right? Like, but you know, like, I feel like this is like where the discussion about the distribution's role in all of this is crucial. And I know I'm over talking, but I feel like that was like an important thing that we wanted to say is like Fedora is the only one that the only one that has this. You know, it feels like we've been on this expedition to figure out what's cool and things like that. And I think the numbers show. And you know, I think the numbers show that you could see when KDE people talk about these systems, like they really have bought into it. And I'm hell yeah.
Yeah, the more you're talking, the more I understand how, like, wow, we really are fixating on the fact that I can't touch system files. And there does seem to be a bigger conversation here about how we change what distributions are, like you're saying.
Exactly.
So
it's open source. We can do what we want. We're not locked into the, you know, we're not locked into, you know, oh, you can't commit today. You're wearing your distribution hat, not your upstream hat. Like, that's not how we, you know, so I think it is interesting. And that's why I think the atomic concept as a name could help, because it kind of moves everyone past the thing, right? And then just we you know, Fedora should actually, you know, hey, let's policies are, I'm not saying you shouldn't follow policies, but like, you know, there are certain things that don't make sense in this kind, in the atomic model, that make total sense in Workstation. And it'd be great if the conversations were around that kind of adaptability and things like, and we should be bringing in cloud folks, OpenShift folks, Kubernetes folks who have, now we have a place to contribute, which is also great, because I'm trying to align I'm trying to align those folks to get excited about the Linux desktop because they're all Mac people. And that really frustrates me. That's the problem I'm trying to solve. So,
All right.
So two quick questions. First off, where can people go to get Universal Blue?
so you can get it at universal-blue.org, and then I'll be rebranding / relaunching Bluefin for KubeCon with new artwork, and she's going to have a mission and all this kind of stuff. I've shown some Fedora people trying to get that marketing going on. And then we have a Discord, and then I joined. There's a new SIG. Actually, Timothy, we should talk about the SIG so that we get people to show up.
Yeah, definitely. Hijacking your question, Eric. Sorry.
No, you're fine.
Take it.
We're starting a new stake. So we're starting the Atomic rebranding at the same time. We're starting the Fedora Atomic Desktop SIG. And so SIG, it's a term that means special interest group. Essentially, is just a way to regroup us folks into the same room, virtual room, and have meetings from time to time to talk about things and make things happen. And so the goal of this SIG is to make Fedora Atomic Desktops the default in Fedora. So we're looking at, first change of the SIG is the renaming, but then we're looking at doing things like fixing the bootloader updates, moving to OCI containers as a default, fixing the way we update some Flatpaks across major versions, etc., all of those things. Looking potentially at removing Firefox from the base image, which is a very common request. And all of those things. So yeah, and we're doing this like in a gathering fashion. We gather people from all the other SIGs, all the other desktops, and like, which is the cool thing here is that we're all working on the same base, on the same tech, and the desktop here is just a small part of it. Like whether you're using GNOME KDE or whatever, the whole stack, it's still the same for everybody, and so we're fixing the bits in the stack here.
That's awesome. So yeah, if you're interested, go check out the Atomic Desktop SIG special interest group. And then my second question was, this is all open source and upstream. So what help is needed? Where can people go and start contributing?
You go.
So yeah, the cool thing is that we call ourselves Fedora Atomic. We have like special names, etc. But we're Fedora. So like everything you do in Fedora, it's already helping us. So essentially all the work packaging, all the work testing, running Fedora, all the work you could do in all the things, or all the work you would do upstream, we benefit from it. So, and yeah, as we follow upstream usually closely, you get it very, very quickly. So if you get involved in the Fedora project channel, you're already getting involved. If you want to get involved specifically into Atomic Desktops, then yeah, reaching out to the SIG, joining our Matrix channels, looking at our issue tracker would be good places to get started.
Awesome. So we are getting close to the top of the hour. So Joseph, why don't you kick us off with? We'll go around the horn here and get some closing thoughts, and we'll wrap up for today.
Cool. So yeah, to be honest, my closing thought is we need a part 2 because I did have a lot of other questions on.
I could go on for hours.
Exactly. Yeah, just quick. I mean, there are questions like, how similar are the atomic variants? I'm changing. How similar are the atomic variants to their traditional counterparts? How does it work behind the scenes? Questions on why are we letting Chromebooks eat our lunch? Questions on the differences between the other, which I don't know. I mean, I guess it's on the other distros how they want to approach the term, but Nix OS, AI. I know it's not micro OS now, but OpenSUSE's implementation, how those things are different, and the pros and cons of different use cases for it. So yeah, I just would love to have a part 2, dive deeper and to just keep on talking about it, because I do think, like everyone is saying, I think there is a trend within Fedora that this is the direction for the distro in the long term, and so it's baby steps, right? And like the weeks that we're talking about these things, but when we can imagine how things can change in the future, that's when we start doing something more exciting than just, maybe my lesson is, Joseph, there's more to be excited about than just that you can't mess up your system.
George?
You can still mess it up. We just it's just a little harder.
Okay. Oh, well.
Yeah, we can the basic.
I'll avoid the terminal then.
Yeah, yeah. You can still blow away your root partition. Just a reminder. I had someone do that. They no.
George, closing thoughts?
Yeah, I'm going to close up. But first, my call for help. Our biggest problem right now, Universal Blue, is our installer. The OCI support in Anaconda is like brand new, and trying to get that to work is beyond most of our skills. So if you have skills around Lorax, especially, and Anaconda is like 24 years old. It can drink. So, we've been struggling with that. We've been trying to we're finally getting in contact with the right people on the CoreOS teams to do that. But if you have that expertise to help us out right now, our installation experience is not very good. Actually, when people give up, we just have them install Silverblue or Kinoite and then rebase to one of our images. But like we want to make that nice and clean so people can swip back and forth. And then the last thing I want to tell people is try it. Like, there's no golden rule of what the Linux desktop is supposed to be. So, 3% usage after 30 years, I'm ready to try something new, so, and we know the model works. It's worked in cloud. It's worked in mobile, and it's just a pattern. Using the common tools is great. Sorry about the dog. Thanks for listening.
All right, Timothy.
Yeah, as George said, try it. Like, give it a try. You'll get hooked, and yeah, if it doesn't work, then try Blue first before giving up. Like, just start with Fedora, because start with Upstream. But if for whatever reason it doesn't work, you have an AVR card or something, go ahead and try Blue. You'll see it. It's likely fixing the issues you will have.
Awesome.
And yeah, I'm really glad to have been here on the show. It's great to talk about this.
Awesome. Well, thank you both for joining us, and Joseph, thanks for hopping on and asking some questions. So as we wrap up today, really, really, really big shout out to everyone in the chat. It's been scrolling by like crazy, so you probably see me off staring at the wall, it looks like.
Get excited,
but
people.
Chat has been going nuts. At peak, I think we had 32 people watching live, so that is awesome. Thank you all so much for joining us and helping make the Fedora podcast a success. We are usually live every other Tuesday. So we've got a great list of topics coming up. We've got episodes planned from now through the end of the year. And so I won't spoil all the topics, but actually I just saw a question go by about Twitch. We're currently live only on YouTube, but there is a proposal floating around to start a Fedora Twitch channel. So if you'd be interested in that, please put that in the comments below. Also, if you have any questions about today's topic, or if you want to get involved, please comment as well. There's a group of us that watch the comments almost daily. So if you have any questions, we'll be sure to get those routed to either George or Timothy. Thank you all very much for showing up. Thank you for being a part of the Fedora podcast, part of the Fedora community. It is an amazing piece of technology, or series of pieces of technologies. But
this is cool.
Truth be told, the real power of Fedora is the community. So really appreciate each and every one of you. That said, don't tell Joseph, because he works in Fedora marketing and he'll kill me if I say this, but I'm going to tell you anyway. I can't say who. I've been sworn to secrecy, and I can't say what. But watch the Fedora YouTube channel over the next 48 to whatever 3 days is, 72 hours. Over the next few days, we're going to be scheduling a special event, a special Fedora podcast episode. I can't say who, I can't say what, but I can say that there's going to be an extra episode next week Don't tell Joseph. I was sworn to secrecy. But keep
I'll
an
let
eye
that
out.
tease fly.
And if you haven't, please subscribe to the channel and hit that notification icon. That way, when we do have special episodes, you will get notified. And in fact, you'll get notified when we go about 30 minutes before we go live. Sometimes that notification reminds me that, oh yeah, I'm supposed to prep for a show. But awesome to have all of you in the audience. George, Timothy, thank you both for being our guest. My co-host today was Joseph, and I am Eric, the IT guy Hendricks. And until next week, have an awesome, awesome time. Thank you all for being a part of the Fedora podcast. We'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, Joseph. Thanks, Eric.
Are you going to tell us now?
No.
Are you going to stop the recording and tell me what it is?
You just saw the.
All right.